allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, November 20th, and we are at Rutland, West Rutland. I believe everyone seated at the table is a voting member this evening. So the first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have additions, deletions, changes to the agenda?
Can I make on behalf of Corey Valley, can we make an announcement to camera at some point that we have a vacancy?
Sure. Can we do that down under
comments?
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Okay.
Where is it going to be, under public comments, or?
Yes. So a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as presented. Second?
Second.
Motion by Kristen, second by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
And general public comments? Do anyone in the public seats have a comment? Kristen, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I would like to say that Corey Valley District Board is still looking for a Pulteney member to fill out the board. So if you live in Pulteney and you're interested in the school board, let us know. We need more vacancies.
Great, thank you. So the consent agenda, a motion would be in order with minutes and approval of warrants. Superintendent's report. Did you have anything you wanted to add or highlight?
We could do this by review because I bring this to each board separately, so it would just be redundant.
All right.
For most of you.
Are there any additions, changes to the minutes? If not, a motion would be in order to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Laura, second by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Resignations. What we do warrants under the consent agenda. We don't have any resignations. We have recommendations. And that was provided in your packet. For Christina Sweet for the GRCSU, the tooth tutor of .37 at $34.38 an hour, and support staff Deborah Singer for Proctor High School .3 career and college counseling, a grant funded position $9,000, and Renee White Proctor High School .3 career and college counseling, also a grant funded position for $9,000. Are there any questions? If not, a motion would be in order to approve the contract recommendations as stated. Second?
Second.
Motion by Lance, second by Laura. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And Chair's report, I will defer to Matt.
So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. We've been talking in Rutland Town about possibly shifting proficiency-based grading. There is a difference, and I think this has been disputed for a few years now, but anyway, there's proficiency-based learning, and then there's proficiency-based grading, and the law does not impose that we follow the 1 through 4 structure. So that's unfortunately how I think a lot of us ended up at a 1 to 4, is that, at least my understanding is, we were told that was the law and we had to. So one of the things that we're looking into at Rutland Town right now is there an alternative method? And so I think people are looking back at grading. And in my opinion, if you're going to go back to grading, the 100-point scale takes care of that. We are at, everybody knows what a 95 is. Everybody knows what a 99 or 100 is. You know what an 85 is. So by doing the 100-point scale, you kind of take the letter grading with it too. And you use a the 100-point scale allows itself to be handled mathematically on the grading systems, which is where we've moved over to computers. So anyway, my understanding is the superintendent's been looking at this with principals. People are talking.
Respond to that?
Yeah.
So we have established a grading task force of administrators that Lisa is heading up. You just haven't heard about it at your meeting yet. So that will be on your agenda, your next agenda, a little blurb about it. We've talked to Corey Valley about it, and we're really looking at doing it from grades 7 through 12. We're not looking at the elementaries because most of the elementaries have had proficiency-based for many years, like 10 years in a lot of the buildings. That said, if Rutland Town wants to look at the lower, we just felt that the grading and the reporting of the grades, it's really the reporting of the grades that we're talking about, that we want to answer the question of what's the best way to report it for all stakeholders, knowing that kids go on to high school, they might be going to a school where they have to be accepted or do something like that, because we've got a lot of students that we tuition out. We have Wellsprings and Rutland Town. And then we're looking at it on the high school level for a number of things like transcripts that go out for valedictorian purposes and things like that. So we've got it. Lisa's worked out a pretty aggressive timeline, I would call it, and we will share it at the next meeting with Rutland Town.
Good. So I just thought this board should know if anyone decides to take up that, discussion, that is something that's being looked into. I think we would at Rutland Town do middle school on, which would be 5th grade now. We moved middle school from 6th grade down to 5th. So the elementary would stay the same as the K through 4, but we'd probably be looking at possibly making a change from 5th through 8th, because Rutland Town doesn't have a high school. So but we would at least do the middle school. It makes sense to keep the 5th grade. But anyway, I haven't held back in my comments. I prefer the 100-point scale because parents can relate to it. They can understand. And I've been a vocal kind of opponent to the 1 to 4. The only reason is because what's a 2.7? Does 2.7 mean I get my kid a tutor? We're not meeting proficiency yet. Well, it's not that time of year. And so it's really confusing for parents, what happens when I get a 2.2? So it drives some of this discussion's interesting, and I think it's been hard for parents, also on timing. And I think if the parents at home can better understand it, they can better work with their kids. And so anyway, that's the issue that I have with it. That's been the issue that it's had from here to Maine. And but anyway, so it's at least, we now have the administrators talking about it, and I think it's important for the other boards to understand that, because ultimately I think it's going to be something that's handled at the local board level, not up here at the SU, but it involves all of us. So anyway, thank you.
All right. Do we have anything to add? Questions? Okay. So, Louis, you're up.
35 minutes.
Sounds like a little cabaret show.
So, the budget is in the packet. It's a 12-page document. I'm going to ask you to go to page 2 to start. So we met the administrative team at central office to look at the budget, look and see what we can cut out. For several reasons. One, all of your local budgets are up, and that's partly due to local drive, as well as the SU budget being up is not helping out. So we wanted to cut this budget so that we could help drive down that assessment at least a little bit to help out the local budgets. So we're going to take this in 2 pieces: the general fund and the special education. So with the first draft, the budget for the general fund was up by $290. The assessment was up by $292,000. So we looked at cutting $150,000 out of it to bring it to $142,000 increase. And so the cuts that we made, which we thought were things that would have the least amount of impact, was we removed 1 technician. So the original first draft had 2 new technicians in to help with technology needs across the SU. The tickets that were being put in by staff. So that had a $65,000 savings. We removed the grant writer position, which was $62,000 in savings. That position is currently unfilled and would have no impact on our district. since it's not a filled position right now. We changed the HRA utilization to 70%. So we're currently budgeting 80% utilization of the HRA fund. We removed the security and strategic planning, which were about $5,000 each. And then other reductions, small things here and there, totaling $8,000. So that totals $150,000, which flows down to your local budgets based on your percentage of the issue assessment that you're currently paying. Those assessments are on page 4, are those percentages, and that's based on ADM. So Ira's currently paying 2.46%, Corey Valley's at 55.62, Rutland Town's at 27.29, and Wells Springs at 14.64. You can also find on page, it's the last page, page 12, an assessment comparison versus the FY21 budget, or the FY20 budget, which just shows your new assessment compared to last year. On special education, we looked at that as well and had several meetings on that. The main problem with special education is everything you cut, you're not getting the full dollar value because we get reimbursement from the state. So for every dollar we cut, we only net 45 cents. That's just going to flow down to the districts. So we did end up cutting enough to have a $50,000 impact, net impact on local budgets. So that's the cut is actually larger than that, but after you deduct the revenue for the reimbursement, you're only netting $50,000. So we took another look at the alternative program and decided to remove that at this time, to look at it a little bit closer, work with other issues, and I'm sure Christine will talk about it more in a few minutes. But at this point, that has been taken out. We added a psychologist. And I'm just going to go through these. I'm sure Christine will touch on all of these because she could explain the needs of these. We added another behavioralist. We changed the HRA utilization to 70%. We added the regular ed tuition back in. So I touched on this at some of the local meetings, but in the first draft, we had been given notification from the state that for any students that are going to private schools that are they're on IEPs, but they have special placements in alternative programs, that we had to take a portion of that tuition and put it to regular ed tuition. And we were using an estimate of 20%. So for a student that's going to, say, a Lehigh or VAC or some other private program, we estimated around $10,000 to $12,000 of that tuition would be regular ed. So we had pulled that out of the special ed tuition in the first draft. And it was in the tuition expense, the regular tuition expense, in your local budgets. Some of them, I think Wells Springs, we talked about it, it was in there, and then I had taken it out in the second draft. By the time we got to Corey Valley, I don't think it was in there because I had time to take it out already. So after that point, we had received notification that the state had changed their mind and told us that now would be special ed eligible. So we put that special ed tuition back in, taking it out of the local budgets, and we will receive special ed reimbursement for that. And then we do have an estimated $50,000 in IDV carryover, which we put in as a revenue to help offset some of the expense for the new psychologist that's listed up above. So those are all of the changes. And we'll take the general fund first, and then we'll go to special ed and have the changes and narrative on some of the changes.
Quick question. Sorry, just real quick. The first one, tech. Why did we end up did someone ask for a cut of one of the technicians? I didn't remember that last meeting.
No, he's saying that they went back, for example, our budget at Corey Valley is up over $1 million. So we gave a direction to our administrators to go back and look at cutting $600,000, $500,000, and $400,000 because we know it's not realistic to go to the voters with the $1 million. And I think Lewis realized, because I'm presuming everyone's budget is up, maybe not,
All budgets are up.
that where it really starts is with the assessment. That's what's stagnant or set in your local budget and you're building around. So cuts here allow you a little option when you're looking at cuts locally. So if we start, and this is a direct cut to Quarry Valley, a savings of $100,000, then maybe I only have to cut $500,000. And maybe you only have to cut $200,000. So that, I think, these were just ideas. I'm presuming he worked with administrators or central office budget people to make these. This wasn't anything that came from anyone at the table.
It was
Okay.
the administrators, and Greg was in on the conversation. And we also talked about strategies to better utilize the tech people, what we can do to help them, you know. So, you know, it was a long discussion. We actually met twice.
Is that tech position in addition to the 2 tech positions that were added already
So
during the
we
year?
took one out.
There was 2 in the first draft. with
In the
one
first
more.
draft, but didn't we add some tech positions
Last year,
Summer.
when we stole, well,
We
when,
added the website person last year, it was in the last year's budget.
It was in the okay, that's what I was
yeah,
just
but
trying
we
to-
added someone else because Greg came and asked and we
Yeah.
hired,
It wasn't an additional hire, we didn't increase the salary.
Yeah,
Right.
that too, but I thought, okay, so maybe he did request these
I thought we
positions.
hired somebody also.
You hired a web person.
A web
No.
person.
Before that.
And there was a pay increase for one of the positions as well.
Yeah, that's,
There was 2 positions that were increased in like April and May.
So when Mr. Jalbert was hired, he was replacing someone or he was an addition? Oh, okay, and then that was, okay, I think that's what we're
Yeah, I
thinking
just-
about, okay.
And so these 2, down to 1 is from the request of an additional 2.
that's
Okay.
my understanding,
All
yeah.
right.
Yes.
So my question just was on page 12, are the assessments for FY '21 reflective with the changes on page 2? Okay.
The only thing I would add is that the only thing I don't support, and I thank you guys for doing that, but is cutting that extra tech. I mean, I guess I would somewhat defer to you guys, but we now have schools from Pulteney to Rutland Town, and out of, you know, the issues that have come up here to the board that, you know, rise up to our level that people are talking about, you know, with us as board members. Tech has been a big one with tickets, issues, getting computers set up. All of our testing is now on computers and Chromebooks. It has been it's been a colossal task getting this all together, and I think we've been behind. So I don't know if it's better to go slow and just add 1, but I seem to think with enough of those issues out there and what I've heard that we really do need 2 people in there. So anyway, that's the only thing I would not support on those cuts is I think we need 2 tech people in there. And that's something that can be, if you split that cost of the extra tech person. And I'm a little concerned too that the number looks inflated as it's being presented because we weren't sure on numbers. We were talking possibly someone being $20 an hour, maybe $30 an hour. But I don't think that rises. I mean, I guess your number at 65 is going to include benefits and everything else, but at the same time, we weren't quite sure where it was going to go. So I think that number's on the high side, and I really think we need that position. That's the only thing I don't support on the general side.
This number is in line with some of the other technician positions, the after benefits. And you really don't know what kind of insurance package they're going to take, and that can range anywhere between $2,000 for the buyback or $21,000 for family insurance. So it is an estimate, and we estimate somewhere in the middle. Not knowing what the decision is in the environment, but we also don't know what the experience level is. So it may come in lower. If they're at the high level, but everything may come in a little higher. It's just an estimate.
And is the change in AHRA utilization reflective of the actual use of HRAs? So 70% is still above or right around?
Still above.
And if HSAs became the thing, we don't know.
It would all depend on what the plan looked like.
Right, okay.
With HSAs, you're paying the full amount of,
Right.
and there's no utilization, so if the HSAs were at the same level, then that would be a cost increase.
Okay.
But, so we are moving to the state plan, next January. We don't know what that plan is going to look like. 6 months of this budget will be under that new plan. We're keeping things as if things were gonna be status quo, but we won't have those details until, we should have them at the next Cory, or the next GRCSU meeting in January. Or you will have them at your local meetings in January when you keep the local budgets. Depending on when you meet in December, we may have some other details.
Based on our discussions with the administration, we feel like we can still get the job done with that one technician. With making other shifts, with other staff. So we wouldn't propose something that we felt would have a negative effect on schools or central office.
I would just add back in, one of the best ideas I heard in a long time, I think, was Lisa's a year or two ago, when she had proposed, when the front office staff is hired, that they also have a background in computer, so that they can be utilized in both. And I know that that was, at that point, kind of put down a bit, but that's certainly one of the items that should have been on the table, and should always be on the table, I think, because a lot's called on that front office staff at every school. And if someone's computer savvy at the same time, it would only make sense to serve in both roles and be able to farm out some of that work. So I still think that's a great idea, and it's something we should always consider, at least at the levels when you're doing individual hiring. And it takes some of the burden off the tech department as well.
Can I add a comment to that? I think we've been talking about that a lot also, and actually at our October in-service, we offered training for front office staff in Infinite Campus, and it was the first time that we could utilize the in-service days to also train them.
Yep.
They were really excited about it. They loved the time together. They loved the training. We got great feedback from them. From the survey that we did, so I think they're gonna see that become part of more of our in-service time.
That's great.
Including some training for them, and technology was the focus of the training.
Other comments from members about the general fund reductions?
Is the security and strategic planning expense, some of that a part of what you think we already pay for in the lease?
So the security, we had that discussion at the last meeting is about, some of that should be borne by the landlord. We did write him, Judy wrote a letter to the landlord about getting repairs done for some of the items that were on the list a year ago and a few years ago. I'm not sure if you've received a response to that.
There's been doing some things that I did the tech guy that does all the maintenance said they couldn't do the window during the spring, kind of in the spring. But they would have done on the docket. That's a real big thing. So, yeah,
But we'll keep working on.
They've been in a few times since we looked at them.
We'll keep working on identifying the needs security-wise, and we do get a security grant once a year from our insurance company if we needed to, but we'll push the landlord to security as well.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, we can transition to Christine for special ed. Do you want to come sit at the table, Christine, so that it'll be recorded?
The new position here that we added of the school psychologist. We've been informed for all of our towns that have high school and middle school choice, and our students go to other schools. In the past, the school psychologist in those buildings that work within those SUs would do our evaluation for our students. We have been notified now that as of next year, we will be responsible for all of our students outside. So that's going to add an additional burden to our school psychologists.
Who were we notified by? The state?
No, by the different school districts. Rutland City, Mill River has gone that way. Otter Valley has asked us to do that. So So those are the majority of where we have students, we have students scattered here and there. But we're roughly at about 58 students right now that are outside. For our school psychologists to pick all those up, not only with the distance and the travel, they are maxed now. What I did was I had gotten information from the other SUs around us about what they have, their total numbers, the number of school psychologists they have. And right now, we're almost the highest of what we're doing, our school psychologists are doing. They are maxed. They are at the kind of absolute high numbers. Our number of students are continually going up. We are at the average, our percent of special ed students is 17.9, which is the highest we've ever done. So it speaks to the whole special ed budget. Just, this year alone, right now, we're roughly, again, we're in the midst of finalizing child count now. That goes in December 15th. So that exact number we'll have after that. But from last year to this year, just what we're estimating right now, we're at least up 20 students. And it's a substantial number of kids with some significant needs. So that's why this request is now coming in. I talked with our school psychologists, with the travel, with the doing it, they just don't see any way they can pick that up. And we have to be in compliance with evaluation. So what I did propose, though, is looking at that. Like right now we have the evaluation team, so we have the psychologist and we have the special educator who does the achievement testing. For this position, it would be a sole position. They would do the full testing battery. So I wouldn't add another team. It would just be a psychologist who could go and travel to all those other SUs and do our outside evals, help when it gets really hectic. I also, because we keep wanting to and we have not been able to, free up our psychologists to sit on our EST meetings, sit in on those, and to really talk about what are students getting? Is this really an appropriate eval we're moving forward? So with the initial evals, we're making sure they're good evals before they come in, they're getting all the data they need, but they just can't do that. They don't have the time at this point. So that's why that's added in there after the fact. I just want to show it. So then with that in place, with knowing we're trying to keep the budget down, we looked at, and the only thing we could change was the alternative program. Everything is sort of there, and even with, with pulling that out, we have needs. If that's what we need to do, we need to do it, but it just, our students have a lot of needs. We're trying to meet them the best we can within what we have, but it's kind of, and I know there was some conversation last time about what are we saving by doing this, and I say to you, I don't know that it's not going to be necessarily a cost saving, especially initially while we build it and see where we're at with it and get it up and running, because we would have fewer students in it to start. But I guess in the same way, if you had an interventionist in, because you say the kids need an interventionist, you don't say, well, how is this saving us money? Okay, it's what we need to support our kids, to give them what they need. So, that's the reason I did. What we did leave in there, though, if we pull out the alternative program, was that piece that's the added behaviorist. That was in the alternative program. I left that so we could at least have someone who could go throughout the SU and try to support schools when they have issues, and go in and do what are called functional behavior assessments, put behavior plans in place, support staff with that, so they would have some support with that.
So was there not a psychologist in that program?
Not a there was a clinician.
A clinician.
Yeah, which, that's the therapeutic side. Our school psychologists are doing our evaluations.
Okay.
So it's different, yep. So that was the piece, the special ed tuition change, as Louis said, that's something we were, the state has changed. Did you know anything about all the talk about, with the independent schools and the fights that were going on with the state, that's where that came from. They finally backed off, the state backed off and said, fine, we'll leave it all special ed. So,
Are we saying to other districts or SUs the same thing for students that we have that are tuitioned or school choiced in? That if there is a need to be,
we
see a
can,
psychologist?
Or we can bill for it. We can bill them for it.
Have we been doing that?
We haven't had a lot, but some do their own anyhow, they choose to, so they have. We haven't done a lot of, our psychologists have not done a lot of,
Bill back.
I mean, have not had to assess a lot
Oh,
of.
okay.
Assessments of students.
98% of our tuition students are within our SU. We have very few tuition students that are outside.
No, but that's what Lisa's saying.
No, I'm
Kiddos
saying
that come
people
in
that
are
come
referred to
in.
the other
No, I'm
SUs.
saying, but we have very few
They're-
students
they're
who
within
come
our
to our
own,
SU.
right,
They're
right,
mostly
right.
within our SU, so as well as in Middletown, go to Pulteney.
Mhm.
Oh, I see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
Right,
Ira
Ira
goes to West
kiddos, so
Rutland.
they're right.
Gotcha.
yeah.
So most of our tuition students are within our SU, so, and we share the cost of special ed, so there really isn't a lot of building on.
That's
Okay.
what I'm saying, we don't have a lot that are coming from outside SUs that are coming to us.
And does this, doesn't this new law indicate that the alternative program would have been completely funded?
But it's the level of, if you're talking the rent and.
Yeah, would that all be
those things.
eligible?
We can appeal to, I called the AOE and I talked to the attorney up there. She said we can appeal to the state board for that, exemption to be able to have the rent. Because once we go to Act 173 in our block grant, it would all be eligible under the block
Right,
grant.
that's what
So
I.
what she advised was that given that, the state delayed that we should be able to appeal to the state board saying that we think we should be able to use that law now to get that reimbursement. There's no guarantee that they'll give us that, but she felt because in her, and that is what they're pushing us to do, to start building our own programs. So, yeah, I did look into that. You know, and there are some other costs we had in there, and I did do another document, from updated that, you know, looking at, because I know there were questions about what other materials, you know, we would need. We had the rent, we had a van to do transportation in there. That would be covered through special ed reimbursement, but then just like $3,000 worth of papers, pencils, that kind of thing, that does not get covered under special ed. An email board and a space, and then I looked at, you know, for some desks, tables, chairs, that we can find within our schools.
Own
We have
buildings, I would
access,
think,
yeah,
right?
exactly. It wouldn't be anything we'd have to go outside and buy, because I'm sure we can gather that from what we have. So, I
So-
do look into that.
Are we seeing now that if we built this program, the students that would be in the program the first year are only students that are tuitioned out to like a Lehigh or?
No, there would probably be two students that we are now feeling, we're not feeling successful with where they are now in our own programs, that we should be doing some other alternative that we haven't tuitioned out.
But the hope would then be in the
And
future.
to start bringing them in. I think you have to build your program and show its success before you start, you know.
Pulling people back.
But we do certainly have the needs of students who are just not successful in the typical educational program, or, you know, going
Did
to
you
class.
solidify a location if you were to go forward?
We're looking at some, you know, I looked at one of the options possibly could be, again, it's hard to secure a location if you don't know, and, you know, what you're gonna do, but one of the options I considered, looking at that's still for rent, is the old supervisory union, the Rutland Southwest Supervisory Union. One of the benefits of that is it's near some of our schools, so you could have some options. Being in Pulteney, they do, the lunch program is all done at the elementary school. They bring it to the high school so they could easily get lunch to that location. Yeah.
Does a building like that give you the ability of space to grow?
Yeah, I think they would. And that's where we base the lunch off of, and that includes the
Questions, comments?
I think it's an important program that we have to figure out how to get done. If it's not this year, it's gotta get done.
And I am, I've been, having really had preliminary meetings and conversations, and we're really looking to me to also then look at expanding programs, meeting with Rutland City, directors, specializing in health, human use and collaborative. But, we need programs at different levels, for different needs, for.
Right.
So the 295 is a gross number, right?
Right, so actually, let me pass this out.
What is the net possible number?
Pass these around. So what I did, on this form, and I put some of those other numbers, but right, if you take the 286, Vivian was in that, if you take the 56% reimbursement, that brings out 160, a little over 160, so you're really netting 125,000.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Right, so I did put that into this.
And when you talk about having programs at different levels, have we done anything within our buildings? I mean, we've talked about this for at least 3 years, probably longer, to take some kind of action just to start and see what that looks like. Have we had any steps in that direction?
We've done what would be called in West Rutland, we have what are they called, non-comprehending students. So they do have sort of they have a program, they have a resource room that is designed for them, with some learning, which is different when we get into some of our other needs and have more behaviors and stuff. We really need a lot of space. Because you need breakout rooms, you need the classroom, you need breakout rooms, you need, space where someone can go into on their own. It's hard to, I have talked with all our principals, no one at this time feels that they have the space to say, you could do that within our building.
Is there any outdoor space at the old SU building, or would students there be limited to being inside the entire time they were on
That's what I agree with something, because I think you need that.
Right on the rail trail.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, you do have, you could go within a reasonable.
Power thing is right there. It's also walking distance to the elementary
To a
school.
lot of,
Yeah.
the high
It's
school.
easier for us.
When we were in that office, we had one high school student who was an intern, and that used to come down every day, and on nice days, they would always walk.
It's not very far to the high school either.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking more in terms, I hear you saying about behavioral needs,
But I
intensive
agree.
needs, that
Gardening, like you can do hands-on things, you can go out and build.
even it needs to be an area that can be fenced in, just like a lot of areas are.
I don't know, if that site would be, it would probably benefit from fencing, but I'm not sure that site would be conducive for that type of outdoor setting on campus.
Yeah.
And then it would be hard to do right now, but.
Green Mountain College.
Yeah.
I know, I was like, I can picture a really nice space right now.
And we've talked to them,
It's
and
wired
fortunately,
and
right now,
everything,
yeah,
but-
they're looking to do everything as one.
It's got
I know, have you checked out?
Well, they're looking, and we're talking about that, like, because one, this is just gonna be off to someone, so no, I don't think that's an option at this point, but, yeah.
It's a little pricey.
Yeah, but they're gonna start in Desperate.
Maybe the parcels,
The closer it gets to April, they're gonna start, they're gonna have, I just think they're gonna have to section it out. There are many people who have inquired, can I just rent this, can I just rent this, and their cash flow, they don't have any revenue right now, so.
Yeah, they should look at the college of St. Joe, they're trying it, right?
Right. So at some point, April, they will be officially in debt. So, they're debt for the year. April will come to
All right, any other questions about the choice program?
And there's no way to connect with, for our public system to connect with Lehigh and do some kind of joint collaborative. I know.
Consensus is on business.
Right, they are also looking at bigger spaces and expanding and.
Do they do the outdoor area, like the farm area and stuff?
Is it specifically because they're not a public, like legally, we can't really do anything collaboratively with them even though they serve?
We can probably do as much as we want with them as long as we pay. You know what I mean? I mean, just from an economic standpoint, I think that's the limitation on our relationship.
But I mean, I think, again, I don't know, but, you know, we're running your own business. I don't know what they would see for them to.
Right.
What's in it for them?
Right, yeah,
I guess I was
yeah.
thinking about spaces,
Yeah.
if they couldn't, if they were struggling to get something larger, to expand, and so were we, maybe we don't use the buildings in the same way, but a joint, I don't know,
Mhm.
I haven't, it was just something I just thought of, but, it seems like there's a similar need in both places, in terms of they wanna expand, they're trying to bring in more students as well, they are already struggling to get instructors and all that kind of thing, so, I just was thinking of trying to both do the same kind of a thing. Is there a way you could collaborate in some way, even though we're separate entities?
So would this behaviorist that you are having, would that, if you had the program going, would you not be hiring?
They would go into that program.
So we wouldn't
I mean,
need.
so they were part of that original 285.
So if you,
that's not in the-
so if you took that, I mean, I'm looking at not a lot of money here when you get rid of that behaviorist and you're netting 125. Does,
So to put it back in, we would do another 119.
additional, 119.
So we ended that insurance, that 20% regular ed tuition fees, and which was offsetting some of those decreases, and then also that in psychologists, which wasn't related to that alternative program. So we
Right.
have other pieces that have went in.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about the psychologist, was wondering if that's at all part of that program, but I don't see it there, so.
And just for clarification, is the other estimated expenses, is that included in your net? Or is that over and above?
That's included in my 120, the 119 net. As long as we can get that waiver.
For the rent?
That doesn't include getting that waiver.
And just to comment about, to add to your comments, Kristen, it speaks to your perception about the growth speaks to, it validates the needs that Christine describes, right?
Don't doubt the need.
Yeah, no, I know. I know you don't, neither do I. And I appreciate you, Meredith, taking a hard look at something that's.
I don't see how it's avoidable in the long run, and I don't know how we can prepare in a proportional, response as to put away 50 grand this year and try, but it just doesn't work that way,
No, it doesn't.
No, but you will be hiring the behaviorist.
So that's a start in building it, and I was thinking about that too.
Mhm. Yeah, I did too.
Does building a program like this, moving students to it, translate into a savings as a trickle down to districts? So if I have if you take 3 students from, let's say, Quarry Valley, and, you know, maybe there's a pair with 2 and a one-on-one, then that translates to,
It will, you know, it definitely will, and if in the event we say we need to then look for an alternative program outside of our own, then it certainly is going to translate into, you know, savings.
Once it's established.
Yeah, because,
That's what I see.
what's the maximum number of students you could have in that old SU building? I know I'm putting you on the spot,
Yeah,
but I'm
I
just trying to
honestly don't know.
envision what the build out of that would be.
you know, and, you know, there may be obviously need to configure some space and stuff,
It's got a big central room kind of like this, and then there's little offices off to the side, and a little kitchen.
group space, and then you would have some of your outside little offices if you need.
So would there be 20 students? Or that's,
That's what I was thinking,
Or-
20 or less.
And do you mean capacity, or do you mean, you
But I
know,
think- I
filling,
think
because it's
it
2
would
different
be-
things, right?
That would also get probably very unruly.
Yeah, it might be too, depending on the needs of the students, it could be too much.
Kind of when, that's a lot of students. to
Yeah.
put into-
For 4 people.
But I would say you could probably go up to 15 and be a reasonable program in a space.
And you were thinking it in the realm of 8 or something for this
Yeah.
first year?
Yeah.
so building it out, and I just like to look at 15, what does that look like in terms of additional staff? So you have the special ed teacher, you have the clinician, you have the behaviors, you have 1 IA. If you have
2
So
IAs.
that's where I
2
think.
Oh,
FTE.
2, I'm sorry.
Then you would be looking at probably either potentially if you doubled it, depending on the levels and the needs, possibly another special educator, I guess, you would not need another clinician, you would
Right.
need another behaviorist, and then you would need some additional, you would need some additional IAs to support kids doing different things at different times. Because again, we want to be able to create independent programming, so, you know,
And
the
do
kid
we-
might be going out in the community to do a work study, so
Sure.
you need someone to go with them, and, you know, just working on other things, so.
And would these be additional hires, or would these be hires from within the SU that would be moving to this program?
What we're talking about now are additional positions.
Okay.
But if you got larger, some of the IAs certainly could be moved.
Potentially if you're pulling
Yes.
kids from, say,
From,
one
but
of
some
the
of those,
schools.
absolutely, so in an IA, it could go.
I guess that's my concern, because it seems like you could create a program, staff it, move students, but continue the same staffing over here, and so then the cost is
No.
doubling.
No, the IAs would move with students. You know, and just, you know, to be honest too, we looked, you know, when we look at the budget and we looked at saying, okay, could we talk about, you know, how can we reduce, could we talk about we're gonna reduce IAs, and we do that and we believe it's gonna happen, and every year they come back in, and it's like, I'd rather, you know, this is sort of really where our cost is than, oh, we think we can save this, but we know.
And some of these
kids
costs
come
are
back.
things like transportation. I mean, there's crazy costs for transportation per student on top of the tuition fee. I don't see how this couldn't save money.
Which is why I put the van
Right.
versus.
Versus busing students to other situations.
So my only question about transportation then is, how is the student getting to this location? Is the van going around and picking up at every school?
It would depend where.
Because that could be a huge cost. I mean, if we're, you know, transporting a kid from Middletown Springs by private van or private car.
That's why we're using it, we're having a van.
Well, that's my question, though. If you're picking up 2 kids from Middletown Springs and 2 kids from Rutland Town and a kid from Proctor, you know, and then what time are they getting on the van? It's like you're going to Long Trail. You're starting at, you know, the circle at.
Well, right now, we have kids going further than that, and we're paying someone else to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and we have, if I'm correct, we have buses coming from Middletown and
To
Wells
Poultney.
to Poultney. So it would be only
Just
getting
adding the
south.
spot.
We used to have a one.
Right, you know, so.
Okay.
We have some, you
Because
know.
when you look at
Yeah,
warrants, you
I
see
agree.
big numbers
Yeah.
for that.
Oh, yeah, yes, I know. Yeah. You know, and that is one of the hard pieces, you know, in all of our staffing, and when looking at, you know, shared staffing, but because we're spread, it's very difficult, you know, for one person to cover all the buildings if they have, you know.
And to get there.
Yeah, in the time and the, you know,
In
that's
a
lost.
small amount of hours,
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that insurance isn't good geography.
yeah.
The merger.
So, thoughts on the program? Thoughts on cuts, add backs, the budget in general?
So I just offer this comment, and this is what I'm thinking, and tell me if I'm wrong or you see some flaws with this, but one of the concerns that I have is that we just haven't developed it enough, and I'm really worried that costs are gonna get out of control. You know, to get in and all of a sudden retrofit a building, switch it all around, big transportation issue that I have, with a tour around the county, with schools all the way from Rutland Town all the way out to Poultney. We're gonna have people in a car, you know, potentially for 45 minutes, an hour and a half, and that's there and back. So we just lost 3 hours out of a day on transportation, both on getting there and sending them back to their school at the end of the day. So there's some major concerns there. How would you feel if we said we shelf this for this year? Because I know there's some board members thinking that. And instead put in the psychologist, and I'm possibly on the behaviorist. I'm worried there because you said they're gonna support and go around. I heard there's an absolute need for a new psychologist, but I wasn't quite sure that there was an absolute need for a behaviorist. But what if we just either funded those positions or just the psychologist? What are your thoughts there? And then it just gave us more time to plan this. I mean, gave us a year.
We'll make it work. I think at any point, it is gonna be, I understand the space, you're right, because we don't know what the space is. That's always gonna be a hard piece. It's hard to, you know, go to someone and say, I wanna rent a space, and what's that gonna look like if I don't know that I have it in my budget to actually do it too. So it's sort of this never ending, you know, and one of the hardest pieces with the whole special ed budget is that we are in November trying to figure out what we're gonna need for next September. And we know this changes daily. So it's always very tricky. You know, I think if you talk to your principals, I get calls every day from principals saying, I need someone to come in and help us with the to figure out why this is happening. So that's why I feel like we can't actually have an alternative for the students to go to. I don't know, it needs to be able to be support to the students that are targeted. So that is why I left that in as one of the components that was put in.
So it sounds like the psychologist was necessary. Is the behaviorist necessary? Is that something you need? I mean, absolutely, you need?
I think our staff would need it. I mean, it's like you're shaking your head, knowing and having been in that position without it.
Yeah, well, and we have very few people in our district that are trained to perform functional behavior assessments and to really go in at that higher level. So your school teams are banging their heads against the wall, they've tried everything with a kid, they're stuck. They need someone with expertise to be able to come in and say, let's look at it this way, here's the data we need to collect, here's how we need to do it, let's come back together as a team, look at it again. how do we refine that? And most of our schools don't have any of that level of expertise that they can tap for that work. So, and I think, you know, as we're talking about this alternative program because we know that the more intensive needs for students continue to rise. So, you know, if there's no place for a student to go when they're not succeeding in school, I think Christine's right on, right? Then who goes to support them in keeping that kid in place? Because they need help in those situations, definitely.
So it sounds like you're kind of saying two things. You have a large population in each school. You have special educators that need support, knowing how to write and knowing how to write behavior plans, which is slightly concerning to hear. And it makes me think that it sounds like it's a local responsibility. Because I guess how is one behaviorist going to be able to address the multiple needs that we're hearing tonight? It doesn't seem like that's a feasible plan. I mean, at Proctor Elementary we have one. She's 50%. It seems like that's a better avenue for schools based on population and need rather than at the SU level.
I 100% agree with you, Lisa. If that, and I think I've been saying that for years, that the schools need to start building in behavioral people into their local budgets to help support them. But that we have some of that. We have a grant we're still waiting for the money to be released for Wells in Middletown Springs that will provide them with a behaviorist, so that will cover those buildings. Proctor, you know, and part of that is funded. GRC issued 50% for the special education. So that is why we are, you know, the one person. So Bolton has one. So within. No, it's under special ed now, and they're looking at moving that, but that's a other piece. So
Pulte has one, Proctor Elementary has one, Middletown's looking at getting one. So if we hire one at the SU level, we're hiring for Rutland Town and West Rutland.
Or where they need it, the high school, you've got Proctor High, where it's needed, and sometimes, you know, those places you need a support. Oftentimes, when you're looking at a behaviorist, they're going to go in, they're going to look at a child and spend probably a week or so observing, looking at it, developing a plan, and this is my vision of it, okay? Then they can go in, they can model how to support that child based on the behavior plan with the within the classroom, and then kind of step away. And so now I've got another kiddo, so I can go help and support that team. Okay, maybe this one's struggling again. I can step back in there. So, you know, they will be semi-flexible. I mean, that's...
Well, I think you just made my point for why it should be locally based as opposed to SU based. That if you're spending that amount of time, and I mean, I think we each have a pretty good idea of the needs that are in each of our individual schools. They may never get out of one school. It just doesn't seem, that piece of it doesn't seem feasible to me. I'm not saying it, I'm not saying it's not a needed position. It seems at this level, it would be overwhelming. And I feel like in a few months or next year, you're gonna come back and say we need another one because this person spent 60% of their time at Proctor High School, and you know Rutland Town's throwing a fit because they really want someone. So that's my feeling.
No, I mean, I think that is the key place, whether you're going to do it locally or you do it coming out through the actually gives you the flexibility of the person can be available to different buildings, and so you may have a time where, I don't know, I have a full-time person in one building, but I'm not really getting utilized all the time.
I didn't realize
it's not really necessary.
they're not under the special education list as being, SU employees. That
Well,
the-
ours are like 50, ours is 50/50.
And I mean, that is a drawback to it, coming under the special ed in the SU, because then it is, and then, I mean, if you did use it, we would look at it like we do any, you know.
Yeah,
set percentage of
the
time.
actual use.
So, yeah,
Hmm.
So the behaviorist isn't always working with students with parents as well, right? They could be any behaviorist, right?
They can then they have to repay this local
Right,
funds.
so it's
Right.
just splitting their
Yeah.
time, but,
At
But-
least
But we're
for
looking
one-
to
for
hire
one
just
more year,
under
for one
special
more
ed.
year.
So
When we
this
get
one
into
would
the
fo-
block grant, if they were in under the block grant, they can work it out.
With whatever, right.
Okay, but the one you were specifically asking
It
for
was
here
for
is
the
specific.
It seems to me that maybe last time, Christine, did you get the word that the plan was kind of attacked from all sides? And so you said, okay, and the budgets are up.
Well, and, you know,
So
and
you
again, we're
regrouped?
looking at what can we cut, what can
Mhm.
we cut? And, you know, obviously, something new and added,
Right.
it's really hard, you know.
Right.
I don't see anything extra in what we already have that I could say let's.
But if you cut off your leg,
Add this.
right, if you cut off your leg
Right.
to do your work, to save blood or something, energy to your foot,
Right.
is that really the, you know, I mean, I wish we had a more developed plan, but based on the timing, I don't think that it's possible. I don't think it's prudent use of your time to develop a plan that you're not sure that the board supports. You know, I don't know.
I mean, a plan can be developed for year one, this is what we're gonna work with, because we already are in budget season right now, right? So year two, this is kind of the vision for what financially you can go in. And year three, then you look at space, or whatever the bigger things are, that, you know, in that kind of a plan, so that boards can sort of plan out and have an idea, all right, we have to fit this in somewhere, so what else do we not fit in, right? If this is an inevitable expense, instead of chunking it all, 300,000 or whatever, 119,000, at this chunk, maybe we divide that up over 3 years, or something like that. And then, depending on your vision, it's a little bit easier to swallow. It may not be exactly what is needed in this moment to get it all at once, but if this is something that is being pushed anyway, we have to plan for it.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to plan in this exact month, but we have to try to, you know, say year one, this is what we're gonna go for, and we might not be able to do it all. But year two, all right, we did that last year, so let's say, okay, we're gonna start looking at spaces that are available, and we kind of know now, okay, we've got these staff people in place, they can go and help kind of have a vision for what kind of space, et cetera. So then you do have a plan, it's just not all right now.
I don't think anyone's saying, don't work on the plan, don't continue the process. I think one of the concerns has always been when you said at the SU and you have to accept the budget before your local budget is, unfortunately, you leave the SU in whole, and when you get to your local district, you often lose your foot because of the SU budget. And so, I would prefer not to lose that at the district, because at the district, that probably means I'm losing a teacher, a direct general ed teacher. When I look at our budget and how our budget is up. And so that's something that as I sit here, I have in the back of my mind, and I'm thinking about. And I had questions. I don't know that it was attacked from all sides. I think when new proposals come forward, that questions arise. I mean, and not to be hurtful, but the proposal was a little light when it came. And so I think that when you look at the people around this table, if you don't think people are going to have questions, you haven't been paying attention to the board members that are seated. So, but I think at the same time, just because everyone doesn't agree with something, you totally shelve it. I think you go back, in my opinion, if a board says no to me, or my board says no to me, I just go back and develop the plan a little bit more and fine tune it. So, and I think that's what we have to do. And I don't think anybody here doesn't want to provide the best education for every student in all of our buildings. But, I mean, it is a big chunk to put in. And I know that if this chunk goes in, that something else is coming out. And historically, lots of things have been added at the SU, and the people that suffer are those at the local level where the big cuts are made. So that would be, I would support putting the psychologist in. I think the assessment piece is incredibly important, just to start the process about having someone that's doing a great job at assessing and seeing what the issues are and providing that report. So I have no issue with providing, supporting that. I really think the behavioralist position is a position that should be looked at more so at the local level. That's just my thought.
Just so I'm clear, are you guys funding those on your local budgets?
We have one at the elementary school. It's 50-50. So
so 50 SU, 50.
50 local.
And Louis, that's correct across the district? Anybody that has one currently is 50-50, or is that?
No, so Fulton Elementary has one that's 50% special ed. It's coming up to us through Rutland Mental Health, so it comes to us at a discounted rate in English, so it has to be, they receive grants that offset that cost, and then it's 100%. Right now, it's billed as 100% special ed. Based on the time studies and how that position is actually working with kids, it may, a portion of that may get billed back to the district if they're working with regular ed kids. We don't completely know that at this point, it'll be based on the time study.
Which goes back to, again, what you're saying,
Right.
and I agree with that. I mean, they need to be able to work with it.
Right.
You know, so again, if this one we would be looking, we would do everything we could, that would be first priority,
Right.
I mean, most of the figures would help, but there are.
And that's the flexibility when it's at your local,
And if the local board, I mean, in Fort Valley, that's still 3 sets of.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Sure.
it still covers a lot.
Mhm. Yep.
But again, that's why I did, like I said, I know the budget is high, so that's why that did come as something we can pull, but I also did want to get back to you because I'm probably not being here last time, but to really be able to speak to you about,
I think it's really important that this get flushed out and be under the planning stage. Because as you're saying, the state is looking for us to do this too. So not only is it going to be advantageous for our students, not necessarily to guess the best we can do for them, but also cost-wise, a smart thing to do. But if the state is also looking for us to do it, maybe there'll be some more support down the road, and then we can always hope. So I really want to see this fleshed out for next year in a real way, and maybe that is going to be looking at how is this down the road going to be moving IAs around, and it just with more numbers in that direction. How you're actually going to be able to implement existing staff into the program and not just simply adding new from outside. So.
And I think the tag-along piece with this is not just developing, of course, fleshing this out, but also how are we supporting and developing internal programs within schools. And I think that's something that we can be doing now, that we just need to figure out how we're making that work. So So
What's unique about that is difficult. At Rutland Town, for example, I don't have any space left in the school. So even if we come up with something different, I don't have any place to, really maintain that program up
And
there.
then the smaller schools, the
Probably.
staff to student ratio becomes an issue.
Yep. And so the other thing I was just gonna mention real quick too is that I think the year was off by one, so I really would like you to put a lot more thought into it for next year and, what we're gonna do and get some firm numbers. A lot of people don't realize this, but this is not usually the year to be putting forward any projects. Because we're gonna be running up against the primaries this year. And you're gonna have a lot of political rhetoric talking about government spending's out of control, taxes need to be cut. So it's looking like it's gonna be an interesting vote this year, with all the budgets being up across the board. If there's gonna be a school budget that fails, whether it's amongst one of the districts or up here it wouldn't be the SU level, but amongst the districts, it would most likely be this year. That tends to happen every other year, and now we're in that cycle. So this is gonna be a tough one with everybody's budgets up. There may be a budget that doesn't make it this year, one of the districts, and people are back at the table trying to figure out what to cut. And this could put us in a bad situation, and that's really what I'm thinking about too. We've already voted this budget, and that's in, and now it's there on the local level. We don't have the ability to come back to the SU to make any cuts. It's gonna be happening down at the local level, because this is already done. So I think we're off just by 1 year, and I think that's something for board members to think about, is the every other year, and the political process that's going on that the schools get dragged into, and that's happening this year.
And I think building it out gives you the option to do a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year outlook. Yeah, and I think that would be incredibly helpful, so.
I'd just be curious to how the proposed staffing or 5 full-time staff is compared to other area alternative programs. It does seem like a high
I
amount of
would
staff.
say it's pretty, obviously you need a special educator,
Right.
we're talking about you need a clinician. You could maybe do it with a half-time, but then again, you're building out, and it's hard to hire half-time people, so that could be shared behaviorist sort of whole piece to work with students with high needs and then office like having a support staff. So, students with high needs need high staff. We know that, they deserve all our stuff.
Thank you.
It does help, when I look at that as though right now, and I agree with that, we've got 6 kids that have, that are either safety issues, high behavior issues, we've got 6 kids. So you are, cutting back somewhere.
And I think that's part of the, the selling point, or being able to show to that cost shift to local districts. So, other questions for the budget? Other changes? What are we looking at? Lewis is looking at us taking a vote this evening.
But are you going through any more of the budget, Louis, after Christine's done with the special ed piece? That's it, figure it out on your own? I get it.
Other than the things that we're proposing in terms of cuts, there haven't been any substantial changes since the last meeting.
We never went through it in great detail, but we kind of went through it page by page.
Right.
Highlights.
And everyone's had it to
Well,
review.
I didn't have the second draft,
No, but there wasn't substantive changes.
but that's what I would have done, is gone over it.
Is it, just for clarity, the direction of the board with the add-ins of the psychologist and the behaviorist, are we adding those both back in? Are we adding one back in? Are we adding 0 back in? We've kind of danced around. I'm not really sure. I'm not clear. I've heard add the psychologist, not the behavioralist. Keep
I don't hear a consensus of anything yet.
I'm not, that's what I'm asking.
Right, for
I'm saying
consensus,
I've
right.
heard those things, that's what I'm asking.
And if I had to prioritize, the psychologist would be my top priority.
Okay.
Where we are, and that's, I mean, we have to evaluate this.
Right, we got 58
This
students.
budget has them built in, the one that we're looking at tonight, correct, Louis?
Has both positions.
Both positions.
Removing
So-
behaviorist has a $32,000.
Okay.
Want to do the weather report on that, possibly?
On the $32,000, oh.
Just to see how, it looks like, I haven't heard anybody have an issue with the psychologist, so I think.
So
that-
everyone just, by a show of hands, that would support keeping the psychologist in the budget? Okay? Everybody by a show of hands that wants to keep the behaviors in the budget?
Is that two?
Two.
If that answers that.
Two.
I'd like to keep that conversation going a little bit, though, because.
Me too, Tim. Me too.
Not, doesn't have to be this evening.
No.
No, we're
But-
taking,
Well, we're voting tonight.
Oh, okay.
so now's your time, conversation on.
Can we move this to December?
What would you like to chat about, Tim? You've been
No.
quiet this evening?
Yeah. No, I was just trying to, kind of take it in a little bit in terms of the local piece and things like that. So I don't have much to add. I was just trying to.
Can you tell us, Louis, just,
expand a little bit.
so we don't really have to think, what the savings is for each district based on these changes from the last budget?
So in the last budget, you wanna go through?
Just,
I figured it out this afternoon.
oh, just what the total change cost savings would be for each, the trickle down.
Draft one, Ira's assessment was 45,009, this is for both pieces.
Okay.
45,910. Corey Valley should know that. 3,013,000. Rutland Towns was 595,000. And Wells Springs was 371,000.
Those were budget increases?
You wanna know with the behaviorist or without?
Okay.
So that was what our assessment was last
That
time?
was the first draft.
Okay, so now, with just putting the psychologist in, what would that do to, because that wasn't in our first assessment.
Wait, Louis, those figures you just
I don't
gave
think
us,
those
that
were the
sounds like
ones.
total budget
Yeah.
increase.
He said, general ed and special ed.
For the assessment?
That includes the go back one. So
Did you-
without the behavioralist position, Ira's would go down to 42,000, so approximately $3,000 savings.
Okay.
Corey Valley goes down to 2,881,000 from the 3,013,000, so you're looking at 16 and 19, 131,000. Rutland Town is going down to 554, which is 40,000 savings. And Wells Springs is going down to 349, 371, so about 22,000 savings.
Okay. And then, is the psychologist added into that first assessment piece number that you gave us? Okay, so if you take the first number you gave us and add the psychologist in, what would that number be? I know, you're a wizard.
So you want, with the alternative program,
No, just the psychologist. That was,
psychologist is in that final number I just gave you.
And, okay, that was my question. And the 2.8 for Corey Valley, the psychologist is in it. Okay, that was my question.
But not PG.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Louis, are the total assessments are on page 12 before any of the changes that we discussed tonight, right? So when I look, Louis, at the total assessment for Wells Springs for the FY21, and it's 349, 735, that includes the behavioralist and the psychologist, right?
The one in the packet includes both.
Yeah, I think your numbers are a little bit off, and I don't know if it's me. I'm trying to,
So taking out the psychologist, or the behavioralist, that's the piece that I'm looking at now.
mm-hmm. I don't know that it's really fair to ask the business manager. I mean, I appreciate going on the fly with things, but for a budget that it doesn't seem like we're prepared to vote tonight, you know, it's kind of rough to, for an estimate I can see, but for proof check budget numbers, I don't know how comfortable I feel about doing that all the time to somebody.
I can give you the different pieces. This total page, when I so right now for the Corey Valley, the special ed piece is 1.6 million. And taking that behavioralist out drops it to 1.582. So it's an $18,000 saving on top of the additional saving. And then Wells Springs is right now at 411, and goes to 407, so it's a $4,000 saving. Ira is at 37,444, it goes to 37,013, so it's only $200 saving. And Rutland Town, it's 582, and it goes, it's 589, and goes to 582, so it's about 7,000. So it's a total of about 30,000, or the behavior is 32,000. About 31,000. After the revenue piece comes out.
And that's what you said before.
So those were on top of what's already in the packet.
So I guess the premier question is, does the board feel comfortable voting this budget this evening? There seems to be some hesitation there.
I do.
I'll participate.
Okay.
Oh, I do have a question about the weather report for the tech, 1 versus 2. So, I mean, there's so many things in here we can't cut. There's so many things we can't get rid of in here. I mean, we all know special ed's increasing. We're not making any cuts here. We can't. Not be ethical, that's for sure.
Well,
So I think, I mean, it's really.
as Christine said, the psychologist is her number one choice. So you do have the option to take the behaviors out. I mean,
But
Well, it
when
looks
you,
like that's what the vote is. I mean,
but when you consider taking out the behavioralist for a net change of $32,000, that doesn't seem responsible. For, I mean, I get it, I heard the other conversation, but as far as disruptions to classes, impeded learning based on disruptions, I don't know.
that's
I don't
one
know.
person for every.
I'm not even in the high school, you know, I don't
It's
even know.
not just the high school, it's every
No,
building.
I'm just saying,
I don't think.
at an
the-
elementary level, I'm aware of the disruptions. At a high school, I expect it is greater. As you're more independent and more, you know,
I just voted because the admin wants it. So if they need it and they think it's necessary, it's become a massive problem. I don't think,
That's how
tried.
budgets just grow, with,
They do,
absolutely.
but this has become such a problem in class that we have now, these special ed issues have now come into the classroom.
But
Right.
this
It's
is
becoming a
one-
problem at every school.
This is one person.
you're right, Matt.
for-
This is
for-
one person, it's not curing the problem, but it's at
And
least,
there's no guarantee that, they may only be in Rutland Town for 2 days a month.
If I could say something, I mean, maybe one of the things they're gonna do is to build them out is, I think, because, your budgets are already kind of, your local budgets are sort of there and you're looking to pull things out, so we're probably not looking at adding behaviorists into your local budgets now. But I think if we do this piece, then we have to look at impact and look at, so then next year being able to say to you, this did help in this way,
Yeah.
you need to expand this into your local budget. Or, we didn't see a real effect of this, so maybe it's not good.
Right.
For the need to add that into your local budget. I mean, I think you have the experience with Proctor Elementary School, you support in that school.
Right.
But it's one way of, it's a starting point. It's gonna be based on need, it's gonna be, we don't know where they're gonna be from day to day,
Go ahead.
I do see it also as that initial spend for the overall choice program. That's what, 80,000 of the 286. So it gets that needle moving,
Initial investment in it. Mm.
Yeah, so I do see it that way.
So here's my question with that move though, so you have this person now that's available to every building. Now you put the choice program and that person moves to that program. The need didn't go away from all the other buildings. If that person's primary building is the choice building, it seems to me, the next response is going to be that we need to add another one to replace the one that we just moved.
or you need to add it locally. If you see that it's if it's been a benefit having that in your building, and that's now going to a program, but you still believe that is beneficial to your district, then you're gonna look at that at your local level. That would be how I would think of that. So this is sort of getting a chance to get some experience with it. Your principal's having that, then they can come back and they can, if they feel this is really beneficial and this has helped us, yeah, we do need this, then they can propose that at the local level.
That page 12, I just corrected, it was one of the lines, so it's the change from last month to this month. With the behaviorist out of the budget is 4,800 for IRA, $132,000 for Corey Valley, $59,000 for Rutland Town, and $34,500 for Rutland.
To take the,
That's out.
that's a big change.
And the
And the program, yeah.
Oh.
Program and the behaviorist, because you're not getting hundred and
That's
thirty-two
taking
thousand.
second draft, then I'll adjusting second draft is
And I can live with the behavioralist out. I mean, the board, my local board, the concern was, we have an issue. Our budget's going from 7.9 million to 8.6. And that's a big issue.
Yeah.
It's a big, big problem this year and the wrong election year for this to happen, so, we
have the same issue.
I'm sure, I'd like to have it, but at the same time, if it does get cut, I'm certainly,
Gonna be
I
able
think
to
that's
live
the
with
area
it,
to
right.
make a cut to, at the moment anyway, until,
So the next round the table moment is the tech position. So there is
I'm
a-
fine with that.
so the question is, I think, start with 2 or 1. I think 2 will, 2 logically will answer the 1 question.
So how many people think there should be 2 new tech positions added to the budget? So some people don't even wait for the Jeopardy question. Yeah.
Is that it? Just 1?
Yeah, I'm all right with 1 in, 1 out, and taking out the grant writer. I mean, last year we had the grant writer position in the budget. We didn't. This is the first year.
It was added last year.
In July, right.
Yeah, it was added during the budget process last year, starting in July.
So we collected on that and didn't fill the position. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, even psychologists and behavioralists, I don't want to build it into our budget and not be able to hire people. That's not going to be good either.
And so building on that, do we think that this is a position that's going to be difficult to fill?
I talked to my psychologist and
Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
And one quick note on the tech piece. You guys said that there was some collaboration on how to make things flow better. Was that, who led that charge? Was that the administrators stuff and what was, and Greg's response?
Yeah, so we had an administrative meeting, and it was Louis and Christine, myself, Lisa, Greg, and we just talked about where can we look at some reductions and not impact children greatly. And but we also did talk about the tech program itself and, utilizing, maybe some of the coaches to go in and do the, just help the teacher with something in technology instead of them giving a ticket to the tech department. Those kind of supports. And also talking about in the summer, how can we do things differently so
I
that
think
things
that's
are more
key.
ready for school. And again, like with the coaches helping getting the tech ready for professional development and things like that. So we just talked about a whole variety of ways that we could help shore up the tech department if they only had 1 additional position.
So I
And
guess.
also knowing this year, they put in new phone systems, which was a huge body of work in the schools. And that's done now.
Yep.
Think about that. That was a huge piece of work this summer, and those guys worked really hard. So, we just talked about how can we do this and what can we change? That was basically the conversation. And how can Christine move forward developing a program? This wasn't saying she's not going to develop it, because the message I got from all of you last month was, we're not saying no, we're saying maybe this needs further development. And we talked a lot about how can we develop that and maybe develop it with another SU, so you're sharing the cost. What kind of buildings can we look at? We had all those discussions behind closed doors. This wasn't just let's budget.
Right.
This was how can we do this but still move forward.
And when resources are limited, you have to have creative conversations.
And that's what it really was.
So, like Matt was saying, based on feedback from townspeople last year, we had this
they're gonna, and they're gonna still see a pretty substantial
Sure.
increase, but a lot of things, so.
Well, I think the other message needs to be, though, also to central office. When we approve this budget with these reductions, with these changes, it's a pretty lean budget. That doesn't mean in September of next year or October that administrators should come and ask for additional IAs, tech support, things that we went through this year, in my opinion. I think that that's unfair to us. When you spend the time on the budget and we analyze it and we make some tough decisions that, you know, and when central office administrators have been involved in making some of these choices, that it's not fair to come in the fall when school starts and throw their hands up and say, now I need extra people. So I think it's tough. You have to become creative, and that's the way we're going to be sustainable here if we all want to stay in our buildings and be sustainable. So.
I would support that.
Sure. Is there other business we can take care of in open session so we can let Big TV and Shauna leave? VSBA dues bill back?
So this was a request by Clarence to put on the agenda. So we get charged VSBA dues, they come to the SU, it's approximately $8,500 per year. I bill it back to the district based on the same way we get billed by VSBA.
So?
I take 50% of the cost, and I bill that based on ADM, and I take another 50% of the cost, and I bill that as even split between the number of districts.
Yep.
Clarence has questioned the way that's being billed back, and he requested that it be billed back 100% based on assessment and not even split fees. We have built this into the budget for next year, which means it will be assessed out based on ADM, but that's not how it's been done this year as well as last year. I'm open to either way. I just need a direction.
What's his reasoning for that?
His reasoning is that it comes to the SU and that all of the other expenses get billed back or get assessed back based on ADM. Which, that's how we assess things that are in the budget, we base them on ADM.
Yep.
But other things that are not in the budget, we bill back based on a reasonable calculation, like negotiations, we bill back based on the number of staff billed in each district. Audits, we bill back based on a direct bill back on who's receiving those services.
What's the change in doing it? I mean,
It's a couple $100 for Well Springs. It increases Corey Valley's cost.
Sure it does.
It decreases Well Springs by a couple hundred. It decreases Ira's by about 800. There's the biggest impact is for Ira. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the impact was on Rutland Town, but it wasn't significant.
Louis, can the member schools join VSBA independently?
No.
So it's the SU's the membership, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it should be on ADM. I support Clarence.
If you want me to change the assessment, I would just ask that there be a motion to do that.
Change it from what to what?
Right now, it was billed back 50% based on ADM, 50% based on an even split.
That's what
So if you want me to
100%.
change it, I would change it to 100% based on ADM.
I thought that's the way you built the budget now.
That's the way I built it
This
for
budget
next
is
year.
for
He's
next
asking
year.
that we change it for this year.
But retroactively, you're saying if we want to change it retroactively?
Correct, for this year.
Mm.
It's already been built.
Right.
I can do that before.
ADM have to do our representation at SU level for USDA? And if we are in as a SU.
Every board gets the same amount of service from VSBA, whether you have 5 students or you have 800 students. So that's the reasoning behind the way VSBA has billed it to us. It's like, they bill it to us based on 50% of their total cost for VSBA is based on the statewide ADM, and the other 50% is even cost amongst all the SUs. So if there's 50 SUs, it's split amongst 50 SUs.
So why is it billed back to the local districts?
Because it's never been in the SU budget.
Why not?
It's just never been that way. That's why we're adding it to next year, to make things easier.
It just seems like it's an SU cost.
It makes sense for it to be at the SU, and that's why we added it.
It used to be actually at the local, they used to bill back districts locally, directly.
Right.
This changed, I think, about 3 years ago.
Right.
That sounds about right.
And so we just haven't caught up to change it to.
I mean, it seems like if you were gonna make a change, the obvious change would be you have Corey Valley, Rutland Town, Ira, Wells Springs. You take 4 districts and you divide it in to $8,500. If you wanna have true equity, and because everyone has the same number of seats,
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Except for Iowa.
But that's not the case, right, with Ira with 1 seat. And then, you know, to pay almost $1,000 more because of the split, and they have, I mean, the ADM numbers are here, you know, the
but
number
you
of
receive the
students
same
in
services
Ira.
regardless how many students, whether you have
But when
5
Ira,
students
yeah,
or 500
go on.
students.
When Ira receives less students from VSBA, Corey Valley can pick up those services, right? I mean, isn't that the truth? If you only have 40 kids, even if you have a whole membership full of perks, you're only gonna use this little bit. You know, it just seems fairness to me, and if it's in the budget, and it's going to be a part of the assessment, then I don't see any change. I'm not picking up the torch to run back what we just did for $400. But I appreciate the insight on it. If you want to go ahead and do something like that, then you'll have to put it forward.
I didn't bring it to the table. I have no reason to do anything. I'm
I
just
think
saying.
Lewis brought it to the table at Clarence's request.
Yes.
Clarence asked at the Wells Springs meeting if this be added to the.
I don't hear support for a retroactive change, but I'm hearing that these shifts in costs.
It's
will
definitely been
implemented
changed.
next-
Yes, it's definitely been changed for next year, so the question is whether it be retroactive for this year.
And I think upon the crickets, that would be a no. So, is there anything else we need to address in public session? Old business?
What's the plan on the budget? What is the impact, the implication of not passing the budget tonight?
I'm
or-
not saying that we're not. Lewis is asked to speak to us in executive session for personnel about the budget.
I do recall that. I'm just thinking about scheduling of the budget, and if there was going to be a public vote tonight about, are we in quorum still with MAC on? Yes,
Yeah.
because Jim came. Sorry.
So if we don't pass the budget tonight.
It impacts me,
The
yeah.
second draft at the local meetings won't have a solid assessment number.
Right.
And so it makes it harder for you to plan how much you have to
Cut at your local level if you don't know exactly what the SU assessment's going to be, and for some of the districts, it's quite a large number, the SU assessment.
So it could have a major impact.
Our meeting is very early in December, so we have 2 unknowns. We definitely have the health insurance unknown, and then we have, if the assessment isn't unknown.
Plus you have all the state information. and
All that
you
stuff
won't
that's
have-
not in.
You won't have equalized pupil, you won't have CLA, you won't have state tax rate.
So you're okay with the warning and getting a budget passed in January, then you're saying?
You'll have to pass it.
This budget? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of divisiveness about this budget, other than Lewis wants to speak to us in executive session. I'm not sure what putting it off until we're not meeting in December for this board, putting it off till January 22nd, which is the next meeting, I
We-
think puts every local board
Did we
at a
cancel
disadvantage.
it? December meeting? We canceled it?
The December meeting was during.
It was on Christmas, but I thought we were rescheduling.
I
we
think
didn't
if we
reschedule.
pass. if
We have to set it
take-
tonight.
If we take a vote on the budget tonight, then we are.
Taking off December meeting. I don't know.
To answer your previous question, I have an old business related question.
Sure.
So I did watch the meetings and last month, because the stuff was here and I was not here. And I remember I do remember Steve volunteering to be on a committee about looking at rental space for the SLR.
Right.
Just for my own sake, since I'm on here, is there any advancement that I need to think about in the next month for that? Or we haven't had a meeting?
No,
We
and-
haven't had
Not
a
with
meeting,
budgets,
so-
and then.
No,
When is
not
the
what,
budget
yeah.
over?
It's
And
too
there
easy.
was a handout, and I'll get you a copy of that, of like space and things like
Yeah,
that.
'cause my question was, it's hard for me to look into
Green
what's
Mountain.
available, except I need
Yeah.
to know what we need, like square
Yeah,
footage.
we
Yep.
do have that.
And we do have that handout, and so I'll, if I can't find it, maybe
Louis,
Judy.
I can
Okay.
I might actually have it in my packet.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kristen. Thank you for offering, or agreeing to be
Yeah, I know,
pseudo
but I just
nominated.
was like, I feel not informed even though I agreed to do it, so I just wanna make sure if I'm
Okay.
missing something.
All right, any new business? Okay, then a motion to move an executive session for personnel would be in order.
I'll make that motion.
And second? So motion by Kristen, second by Lance at 7:48 to move into executive session for personnel.